Hey, Sharice, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
got it. We're ready to go. Just let me know when you want to advance the slides.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say good afternoon, good morning. Actually, still good morning here in Germany. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today at the Kaiserslautern Post Society of American Military Engineers meeting. If you are here for something other than that, we invite you to stay, but you're in the wrong meeting. It's been a while since we've got together. I know our December event, we had a good trip down. It was very few of us, as COVID kind of canceled the K-Town Christmas market, but we did do an architectural tour of downtown K-Town. And I will tell you, although the small group that was down there, it was a very good um, insight into the history of the area and some of these hidden gems that you wouldn't know are around you in downtown K-Town. So I would say that I'd encourage us to look next year, in whether we're living with COVID in a different state or COVID's eradicated by then. But I would like to expand that and get more people. If you're only in the K-Town area for a few years, especially like on a military or civilian assignment, uh, it's a hidden gem right here in town in the history. And we even got into some of the engineering on the outskirts on how some techniques that were employed to build in this area that at the time were probably fairly new because of the conditions of the soil and the water table and things. So Jen Regal, thank you for setting that up and getting us out there. And next year, let's hope we can have some glue vine at the end and kind of celebrate with the market ongoing. But a very good event. And so what have we been doing since we last talked to everybody in a general membership meeting? It's really hard to believe it's already been just over 6 months since the the new slate of officers have been in place. But as I'll show you here in a minute, can you go ahead and advance, Sharice? I'm trying to remember what the next slide is off the top of my head. Yep, we'll talk about the event. So what I wanted to show was down at the bottom. We took your feedback. I know back in August we asked Jen put together a quick survey on 10 questions. Give us 10 minutes to answer 10 questions so we can shape what the program's going to look like over the coming year. I'll tell you a little bit, both between the Omicron variant of the coronavirus and Operations Allied Welcome and there was welcome and what the R turned into for OAR. Um, things slowed down a little bit. We had a social plan. A lot of our personnel in this area were really focused on that operation in the fall timeframe, and then we kind of rolled into the new wave of Corona. So some things that we had planned, we kind of had to table for a little while and hope to get those back out here. But we heard received your feedback, and so as a board, we sat down and came up kind of with 3 kind of focus areas, and you can see them down there. One is really increasing our learning and professional development is what the post really wanted us to focus on in the coming year. Also networking with others in industry. We think that's one of the key things from SAME, but lifelong relationships that you will make in this organization, both if you're on the government side, whether civilian or military, or if you decide to transition between government service to industry or vice versa, to solve our national security problems as a nation and with our allies, it needs to be a strong network and connection between all those entities. So we saw that as another major focus item. And then one I will tell you that I am very passionate about, I know many of you are, we read this loud and clear, is how do we develop the future to make sure the STEM pipeline for science, technology, engineering, and math. I know some throw A in there for the artistic side and design. When you think of, the example I always think about is just a plain smartphone versus an Apple iPhone, no federal endorsement of sponsor. But how do we go out and one, light that spark within our next generation in the schools to get them interested in the STEM curriculum and pipeline, or take that spark that those already have and harness it and expand it and catch it on to others. And so we are really, Sergeant Bailey will talk here in a little bit, or the team, just on some of the things that we're going to try to do that. And so STEM outreach in our high schools here, both in K-Town and at Ramstein, and then our scholarship program that's coming up. So as we look at the limited amount of resources we have, understanding that this organization. You all have a full-time job, maybe 2 full-time jobs, and we're looking for, if you can give us 5 or 10 minutes a week over the course of a month to help us continue to move this organization forward, we greatly appreciate it. Um, Jen or Sharice, you want to talk about the upcoming event here next month? Exciting.
I'll be
Sure.
happy to, Colonel Matt. Oh,
Go
go ahead, Jen.
That's okay. Okay.
Okay, we've got a great event coming up on the 23rd of February. It's going to be a joint post meeting with the Rhine-Main, Kaiserslautern, and UK Post. And it's on a topic that's near and dear to all of us, and that's the challenges of estimating and managing design and construction cost risk in Europe. This will be a 2-hour event. Be on the 23rd of February. So check each post website for more details on how to log on, and we hope you can join us. We're doing it a little bit later in the day so that we can get a lot of the folks from the U.S. to join us. So there'll be more information coming out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's important just for these save the dates. I know I saw the meeting invite go out already. If you can attend that one, and I would say for those that maybe haven't been on the SAME National website, you see the link down there in the third major bullet between the national calendar and the strategic plan. And they've really kind of reshaped as an organization how they would want the post to set out their program over the traditional way we used to do it over the last probably decade or longer. They really want to see us align events and activities to the SAME strategic plan. And so I will say industry government engagement is the number one goal. And to be eligible for any kind of recognition as a post, you have to satisfy one event in there. That's how important it is. So there's varying levels from post sizes to having an event like we're going to do with all 3 posts to, hosting an industry day and many other things. But that is one of the key priorities and goals of Society of American Military Engineers at the national level, is that industry government engagement. If you want to find out what's going on, the very first thing you need to do is 1, be a member. 2, if you aren't a member already, go ahead and transition your membership over to the Kaiserslautern post. And then that way, or if you're a member of one of the other posts that are listening in, make sure you assign to a local post. That automatically updates the email distribution list we get from SAME National, and we can make sure that you are getting all the emails that are necessary. But the European group as a region sends out a monthly news flash, and you should get that. If you're not seeing it, encourage you to reach out to your membership representative for your post, and then we can make sure everything's set with national, and then make sure that your stuff also is not going to your junk folder accidentally because of the way the automation comes out. So thank you. And then just some other things for those that are transitioning perhaps from government, both either military or civilian, to a retirement. There is the career transition workshop. I know one member that's they're doing it slightly different this year. They're doing a virtual portion, kind of 1 day a week, leading up to the in-person event in middle of February there in Maryland, which is the traditional career transition workshop. So it may be on the verge of being late to sign up, but I think they would still take you even though they've already started. And then I would say, we all know JETC. JETC is planned as a in-person. I believe it's going to be also a virtual portion event in Aurora, Colorado, coming up a little earlier than normal. Typically that usually happens around Memorial Day, but it looks like the beginning part of May. So that should be a very good event. And I will say I missed last year because of COVID and travel. And I would say just the time zone didn't work as well virtually for me. And that's where I got a lot of my professional development hours for the year over the past few years. So I ended up having to take a couple courses, so I fell a little short. So it's just something to plan about. Okay, if you can advance to the next one, please, Sharice. Sergeant Bailey, are you on? Or Susan? I'm just scrolling through my list over here. I do not see them on. So a couple things. As we mentioned, one of our three key focus areas is STEM. And so we had the opportunity to go out and do some engagement with the high schools right before the end of the calendar year, going out and talk to a class or two, reestablish those relationships with both the Kaiserslautern and Ramstein Dordea high schools. And you see one of the very first things is the summer camp. So if you're not familiar, SAME sponsors these engineering construction camps. They have essentially each service has one. The Air Force now has two. They've got one at the Academy at the Farrell site, and they've also got one at Scott Air Force Base. Go to that link there to see all about it. But we do have a student who attended one previously from a different area that we're going to have that individual share their experiences at the upcoming event that we're going to have at the high schools during Engineer Week. But that application is open, and we are looking as an organization, once we see if anyone applies from this area, is look at what we can do for a stipend to help sponsor that, because there is a cost to both transportation to get to the camp, and then there's a camp usually has an entrance fee. So depending on which camp, that selection, so they need to apply, those selections are made at the national, and then we get notified if a member is in our area. But I will say, I know personally an individual that went and had a fantastic time and really fueled that spark of STEM they already had inside them. And they were out to the U.S. Air Force Academy camp. So looking forward to seeing some names, at least one from our area, apply for that. It can be typically each camp has got a slightly different age group they're looking for, but in general, it's a rising sophomore for someone going from their freshman year in high school to sophomore year up into their senior year is the limits they're really looking for. So encourage, if you know anybody, they can go out to that link, but we'll also be sending that link out to the high schools, and then a little more personal engagement. The other second one is our scholarship. So every year, we'll see it coming up here, we do the golf tournament, and then we award scholarships. The scholarship committee there of Airman Foley and Airman Hobbs are working the updates to our application forms and letters, and we are looking to launch that next month as well, as we roll out Engineer Week, with the goal of getting those awarded to everybody before high school graduation this year, which is the first week of June, end of May. If you have any comments, there's the POCs there. Let's see if any of them have joined or have anything else they want to add. Okay, next. Al, are you on? You want to talk about the golf tournament? I see you that are.
Yeah, sure. So we've tentatively scheduled 19 August for the next golf tournament. Again, another great opportunity. Let's get together, have some fun, and do some good things, raising money for scholarships. Hopefully this date doesn't conflict with other things going on, and we'll get an earlier start on advertisement and gathering of volunteers and sponsors, and let's try to get about 20 teams out there if we can. That'd be great.
All right, thanks, Al. Yeah, I think that I know I missed last year, but it was a very good event, a little bit more scaled down because of COVID. We were just doing our write-up for the streamers and realized some late approvals by the wing leadership because of COVID, but we still had a good turnout and we're able to raise some money for our scholarship program and STEM programs. I think it's always important to recognize, and Chris, I know you're on, I've been talking to you about this one, but we have a sustaining membership chair, and it's always important. This organization can't be what it is without our sustaining members. So I appreciate Cherise putting this together to highlight who our sustaining members are of this post. And we have a new one this month. And so Chris, you said you're on, you want to give a quick update on who our new sustaining member is if those don't recognize it outright? Over.
Sure. Hi, good morning, everybody. Yes, I'm the sustaining member chair, Chris Wilkes. I'm based in Poland right now. Our new sustaining member is Burns and McDonald, so welcome aboard to them. I'm not sure if any of your members are here. If I can quickly just point out too, we like to give, starting next month or possibly the one after, a couple of minutes at the beginning of each meeting like this to introduce your company, maybe 2-3 minutes, just what you're doing, what you're looking for. So if anyone is a member of a sustaining company and interested in that, please look up the email address on our post website, and I'll type it in the chat after this. Send me a message and I'll get you set up to do that. So thanks a lot. And welcome again to Burns and McDonnell.
Thanks, Chris. The other piece I would just say, I've always kind of found important in some of those as those on the government side. For our sustaining members, as you look to present those, it would also be helpful in one slide if you had, make sure you include some of the contracts that you maybe are on in the area if we wanted to reach out to you or use your services. That's always helpful, whether through the Corps, through Air Force ICC, which is our contracting command, Air Force Civil Engineer Center, or the Navy. For those that are stationed in those regions, to be able to know how to reach and get you if that's something they are interested in. Also, recognize at least these are the changes in rosters that we saw last month of individuals who are new to the post. So we want to welcome them and thank you all for joining. Once again, hope to see this list continue to grow as we get members either one, transition their membership or transfer it from a previous post, make us their primary post, or we recruit new members to the organization. It's always a good plug if you do, as I talked about, just giving us 5 minutes a month. I know that may sound like a little bit, or 5 minutes a week, 10 minutes a week to help support. I would tell you an organization like SAME really runs on the fuel of its membership and volunteers, and getting those volunteers to find their passions, to find an area where you think you can contribute. And I said those 10 minutes a week are really from a greater number of people. Say you have 20 people contribute 10 minutes a week, that can really expand where we want to go. Like I said, understand you have a full-time commitment to your job or your employer, but I think for the good of the nation and the good of the engineering and community, both the future and current, this is a great organization to do that. So our post membership is Master Sergeant Daniel Bailey, and you can reach out to him on Global, or he's also, information is on our website. Okay, thank you. Let's go next. So I'll tell you, very excited today. So for those that don't know, we don't have chapters or posts right now up at Spangdahlem, up in the Bitburg area, or down in Aviano. So we have reached out, now that we can do this virtually, to try to bring in other members from outside the K-Town area. I know we already had the other post, but those that are out there that support military engineering or the engineering community and that may not have a post near them. So we are able to expand. And this is a presentation today. Fortunately, I learned about this one when the 52nd Civil Engineer Squadron was here at Ramstein with an exercise toward the middle part of last year in 2021 through this concept that our commanders after called the Agile Combat Employment, or ACE. And I will tell you, I saw it introduced there, and then the Air Force also has very similar. If you've ever seen the show Shark Tank, I think it's on CNBC, but where entrepreneurs get to come in, pitch their ideas in front of the sharks, and then to see if they get any shark to bite and to invest in their company. Well, the Air Force has something on innovation similar called SparkTank. And they normally will start out at a wing level, flow up into the major command level, and then they compete at the Air Force wide. And I got to be a judge this year for SparkTank here, and got to see this presentation and video they put together and say, man, this would be a great topic for the Society of American Military Engineers. Because, you know, I've heard many people say this, we can talk about innovation all day and you try to do that, support it top down in an organization. But I think really your best ideas will come from the bottom up approach. You give your members of an organization the guidelines, the things that you're looking for, the vision, and they can find better ways to do things. And this is an example. So we are very pleased to have Senior Master Sergeant Kenney from the 52nd Civil Engineer Squadron out of Spangdahlem Air Base. And I turn it over to you and look forward to your presentation. I would say for everybody, if you have a question, let's go ahead and use the chat box or raise your hand, and then we can go through. And Sergeant Kenney, if you rather have all at the end or as you go, I'll let you address that to everybody. But please either raise your hand using that feature or put it in the chat box. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, Colonel, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to come share some of the amazing things that our engineers here at Spangdahlem have been working on. And essentially, I am Senior Master Sergeant Brent Kenney. I'm the infrastructure superintendent here at Spangdahlem Air Force Base. And I want to take a little bit of time to share with you Project ArcWater. And like the Colonel mentioned, this is a SparkTank finalist, but it's been a labor of love. And this is something that's not just been, that's come about in the last year. We've been working on kind of this concept for ACE, or for just really light, lean, and mobile power and water solutions for almost 3 years now. So with that being said, if you would, the next slide, please. Slide.
Senior, we're 2 slides in. We're now in what is ACE?
Oh, okay. I apologize. The slides aren't updating on my screen. It still shows just the over one. So really quickly, I just wanted to kind of touch on ACE, kind of just a brief history of some of our efforts for ACE, and then kind of talk about what Project ArcWater is, kind of where it came from, what it's designed to do, and how we're going to try to employ it to make ACE better. So Air Force Doctrine 1-21 defines ACE as a proactive and reactive operational scheme of maneuvers. Essentially, it's the ability for us to pack up, move away from the base, and still generate air power. It operates kind of on as you see the picture below. You have your main base, and then we shred out from there and head to a forward operating site. Or you may have also heard it mentioned as like a hub and spoke technique. So next slide. So we're actually looking at some of the kind of the lines of effort that us here in the 52nd have started about November of 19. And we kind of said, hey, what is ACE and how are we going to do this? So initially, we just kind of started with the equipment that we had. We used SSS tents, our traditional power generation equipment. And we started figuring out like the hurdles that we were going to run into. Initially, like SSS tents, they aren't very light. They aren't very mobile. They take a lot of time to set up. And same for our power equipment, right? These things are heavy. They require lots of fuel, lots of infrastructure to actually set these things up and move. So next slide. And then as we continued into the year 2020, we're still kind of building these concepts up. We got away from the SSS tent, and then we moved to what is a UTS tent. And if you're unfamiliar with the UTS tent, I have some photos here a little bit later. But it's essentially a tent that goes up, and you can set the tent up in about 10 to 15 minutes versus a SSS. It's a lot easier to do, a lot more mobile, and is really kind of come to the bedrock of the tents that we use for ACE. Next slide. And then as we moved into like 2021, a lot of the things we kind of really, as we started focusing on these bed down operations, like the comm equipment, how we were going to get these things immediately there and set up. And we realized that trying to get our MEP generators on our ADVON team or our ADVON vehicles, they wouldn't fit. So we were having these ADVON teams go out, and we were trying to like really supplement their power with these little small generator options, and then have the logistical tail catch up. And so that's kind of where we're at with ArcWater, is we're trying to use this project or this program to really kind of cut that logistical tail and shrink that footprint. So essentially you'll have your ADVON team that moves out, but by the time the rest of it, the logistical tail for ACE gets there, the site's pretty much going to be set up and operational. So let's go to the next slide. So essentially, what is ArcWater, right? What's the whole overarching idea? And it's kind of what I've been mentioning is, how do we reduce this operational energy and the logistics involved in moving lighter and leaner and still have that capability to generate the required air power? So that's kind of where Project ArcWater, that's the purpose, I guess, is of Project ArcWater, is to reduce these power requirements, to reduce the fuel that's required to power these sites, reduce all that associated equipment and infrastructure that we would traditionally use when we would go anywhere and set up these sites for deployments. And the big piece too is eliminate the requirement to bring or procure water, because there's two things about fuel and water. They're heavy and they take up a lot of space. And so having that ability to, you don't even potentially have to use contractors or transport that water that we would typically use on a site. So next slide, please. So what is Project ArcWater, right? Where, how did this come about? And so essentially Project ArcWater was started using a SBIR phase 2 funded for the solar piece of it. And we worked with a company called Pavilion out of Brooklyn, New York. They actually own the informational patents and technologies for the solar fabric. And then the water harvester was actually procured through a phase 3 SBIR direct purchase from a company called Gyrene. And the water harvester, the actual brand name is called a mangrove system.
Hey, Senior Kenney, real quick, just so we're tracking, which slide number do you think we should be on? I know we're lagging a little bit for those who downloaded them. Are you on?
I'm on slide 8, sir.
Slide 8 that says Solar Fabric Integrated Power Systems.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just so everyone's following along. Thank you.
I apologize. Just bear with me. I'm still stuck. The screen's still stuck about 2 slides back. So as I say slide, I'm just giving it a few seconds and then moving forward. But
okay.
To get back to where I see us, that's how the actual kit and equipment were procured here at the 52nd. And so the neat thing about a phase 2 SBIR is that it's at no cost to the unit. The AFWorks and the SBIR, they fund the commercial company to design whatever your thought or idea is. You get to work directly with that civilian company. So the system that we have here at Spangdahlem is actually the second system that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, kind of designing and bringing that idea or that concept to fruition. The first one was at my last unit. I was assigned to Robins Air Force Base. I was a member of the 53rd Air Traffic Control Squadron. And that's kind of on the next slide. That's kind of what I was going to kind of mention was, how did this concept or idea for ArcWater come about? And at the 53rd, they're like a deployable unit. That's all they do is they're essentially a mobile airport. And so on my time there, we basically train. That's all we do is train to deploy, but we take all of our equipment with us. And that usually includes all our own water and our fuel. And so when Hurricane Michael destroyed Tyndall Air Force Base, our unit was actually called up and we got on a C-130 and flew around behind the eye of the hurricane. And when it moved off Tyndall Air Force Base, we actually landed and reopened the airfield at Tyndall. And that's kind of on slide 9. That's some of the photos from that operation. But it didn't take us long. We flew in on a C-130, and it didn't take us long to figure out we had a serious problem. We only brought like our standard UTC pack out amount of fuel. But after the hurricane had passed through, there was no clean diesel to be found for about 90 miles. And so we had to switch gears, and we were literally convoying tractor trailer loads of diesel from middle Georgia to Florida to that hit area. And so that's where the idea came from. How do we tackle this problem? And so I had the idea of being a power production troop. I had the idea of what if we flip the script? And, traditionally we would go set up these these sites. We would set up the electrical infrastructure. We bring in our generator, we bring in all this fuel, and then we turn it on. And no matter how much or how little load is on that generator, the window of fuel consumption is very small. So for like a MEP6, you're going to be burning anywhere between 3 to 5.5 gallons of fuel, whether it's completely loaded up or it's completely empty. So that's where the idea for ArcWater actually came from, was to initially try to save diesel in these logistical requirements. So if you go to the next slide, slide 10, it's basically like an architectural rendering of what this concept was in the beginning for ArcWater. And essentially you take the solar fabric and it goes over the side of, this is actually looks like it's on a triple S, but on a UTS tent, I'll show you a picture of that here in just a moment, but you have like an upper row of solar panels or solar arrays, and then you have like the ground mount arrays, which are what's on the bottom. So the system is actually designed to output 15 kilowatts, which is about a third of a MEP5. And it also uses these super high efficient ECUs. And that was a problem that we really kind of had to solve when it came to how does this actually work. Because the traditional ECUs that we use on our environmental control units, HVAC units, that we would use to set up a site are a huge power draw. They're about anywhere between 8 and 10 kilowatts. So when we paired with the solar fabric team, they actually designed or went and found a super high efficiency split unit that's actually reduced that draw from about 10 to 12 kW down to a little under, well, total it'd be about 4.2 kilowatts. So almost a third of the power requirement has gone into that. But if you go to the next slide, slide 11, here's some actual photos of the system that we have here at Spangdahlem. So as I was mentioning, it uses the solar arrays on the top of the UTS tent and the ground mount arrays. And it actually has an inverter and a battery system. And so the concept was, instead of sitting there and letting that generator run, 24/7, 365, how about we use solar, see how much solar energy we can generate. And then what it does is the inverter will actually use that solar power it collects first. And then if there's still more need for power, it'll actually pull the rest of the power requirement from the batteries. And the inverter is really, really smart. So it can actually monitor the battery levels. And what it'll do is as the battery levels say, let's get to 20%, the inverter will actually now start a little small 5 kilowatt generator, 5 to 7 kilowatt generator. It'll actually start that generator and bring it online and recharge that system, all the while still using all the solar energy that it's collecting during this period first. So it'll recharge that entire system. And then when the batteries get to about 95%, the inverter will actually turn the generator off. And then it's kind of like wash, rinse, repeat. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours the generator will run to completely recharge that system. But when we talk about batteries too, as well, that's another good point, is these are, think like Tesla car smart batteries. Like these are like leading edge battery technologies, and they're designed to be charged and discharged about 15 to 20,000 times before they need to be replaced. So if you do the math and say, hey, we'll completely charge and discharge these batteries, that's almost 10 to 15 years before you would have to replace them. I saw a hand go up, Colonel. Did you have a question?
Nope, just wrong button.
Oh,
Keep
okay,
going.
my apologies. Major had asked in the comments, Major had asked what SBIR was, Major Blomberg. SBIR is Small Business Innovation Research. It's basically like a grant that the Air Force gives to these civilian companies to fund and design your product. So yeah, so essentially the generator comes online. So traditionally we would burn anywhere between 300 to 500 gallons of diesel on a 72-hour timeline for like an ACE mission or Agile Combat Employment mission. So in testing, we've realized that we can probably slash that number realistically somewhere around 50 to 70%. We actually have field tested this a couple times, but the really neat thing is we used it in an exercise, and we've figured out that, yeah, somewhere around in that neighborhood, based on the size of the power requirement, we can reduce those fuel requirement by a pretty hefty number. if you go to the next slide, slide 12, there's actually two different tent systems. So one of them was we used for the UTS, which is what we have, and we have been using for ACE. This tent system is part of the, I guess, the prototype system that we'll be receiving in April. And this is another kind of another concept that the company's actually developed for us to give a try. But it comes with a super high efficiency liner, and it'll use the same HVAC technology. The really interesting thing about this, the technology, and you'll see, or the concept, you'll see a picture on the next slide of the ECU, is it used a split unit, traditionally like what you would see like in an office with the blower on the inside and the compressor on the outside. They've used these split units, these super high efficiency split units, to put in the tent. The blower goes on the inside, and then where the tent and the Velcro meet, you lift the Velcro, and the flexible refrigerant lines slide up underneath the Velcro, and then the Velcro goes back down and the compressor sits on the outside. So what the company did was, actually there's an imbalance in height between the compressor and the blower. So they built a false bottom on the blower, the part that sits on the inside. So when you go to move them, or when you go to transport them, the actual compressor and blower come together. And then it uses kind of like the Pelican latches, the Pelican case latch, like the twist and lock, to secure the two together. And then it becomes man portable. You can like lift it and move it around. And if you go to the next slide, you'll actually see, that's the actual real world picture of the tent in the slide before, as they're kind of designing it out in the manufacturer's warehouse. And then on the right side, you actually see the blower and the compressor that I was just talking about. And they're actually going to have the ability to marry those two together, so it makes them a little bit easier to transport. And one of the neat things about this concept of Project ArcWater, and I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, but everything becomes man portable. So yes, we're going to do a lot of great things and save fuel and kind of cut the logistics piece of that, but everything also becomes man portable. So there's no longer a need for a prime mover. You don't need a forklift that we would traditionally use to move generators or HVAC units. All these things become man portable. So that cuts the logistical, another big piece out of that logistical movement, right, that we were talking about, of how do we get from point A to point B. And you don't have to bring a forklift, which requires tractor trailers, and all the logistics that come with moving that, and that manpower that comes with it. So if you go to the next slide, this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. We actually, when we first field tested this, DTRA, the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, had an exercise here on base for initial response force capabilities. And so we set the system up and took it completely off the grid, the base power grid, and we fueled it completely on solar. And initially we were making 100% of the site's power requirements for COM. They had SIPR set up, they had NIPR set up. I was trying to think, they had their Starlink, they had that set up. There was about, I think about 10 to 12 laptops that were running in there at one time. And we were making 100% of that site's power requirements. And then they actually brought on a dish, it was a fairly large communication satellite dish. And when we plugged that in, it was a pretty heavy add, and that dropped the overall performance of the system to about 20%. So we were still making 20% of the site's power requirement. And if you've ever been to the Eifel region, it's not the sunniest place in the world. But we were actually you see the bottom line, it was actually 2 inches of snow had fallen during that exercise. And we were still making that kind of power on kind of a snowy, gloomy day. But each, like I said, each system is designed for about a 15 kilowatt total output. But each one of those squares, like a ground mount array, can make about, in prime environmental conditions, can make about 5 kilowatts of power. So yeah, I kind of hit on that earlier. The really neat thing during the exercise was realize, like, hey, this actually works. And the way we used to set these sites up, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, was with all the traditional equipment. We would have like frequency converters, and like, so we would go NATO bases or other locations. We were trying to use the power that was existing with a frequency converter and distribution panels and these type things, but they weren't very reliable, and it didn't take us very long to figure out that, you know, we needed to find a better option. So if you go to the next slide, this is kind of the introduction to the second half of ArcWater, and it's the atmospheric water harvester. It's actually made by a company called Gyrene. But the really neat thing about this is it has the ability to harvest and purify 30 gallons of water a day from the air, from the atmosphere. But it also has a reverse osmosis system in it, and it can do up to about 356 gallons a day just on that reverse osmosis system itself. The really interesting thing is it'll operate for 5 days on its own. You don't have to charge it. It uses the same battery technology as the solar kit does. So it has its own, you can't really see it in the photos, but it has a little solar panel on top of it. So as it's sitting out there, it's recharging itself. It has Camelback connectors. So if you see the little, like the four little silver push buttons on the right of the screen, you can actually take the drinking tube or the drinking end off of your Camelback and attach it to the water harvester, and you push the button and it'll fill up your Camelback. The whole idea around the system was the Air Force allots just under, if you read the AFIs and the paperwork that drive this, it allots just under 4 gallons of water a day per person in the field. But it allocates, or it basically does that gives that number because it plans ahead for almost over a gallon of water of spillage and waste. So the whole system's designed around, you know, not spilling water, really water conservation on top of being able to have that ability. It'll desalinate. You know, you can use salt water, brackish water, any natural environmental resource like ponds, lakes, streams, to harvest water. And it was actually through an AFWERX Phase 3 purchase. Essentially what that is if, say, you know, in the Air Force, there's so much bureaucracy. If we wanted to buy something and it's over a certain limit, you know, we have to go out and get these 3 quotes and kind of run that whole process. An AFWERX Phase 3 is almost like an approved sole source. So if you go to the AFWERX site, you can actually pull up an Excel sheet, and it'll tell you kind of what phase in this process that they're at with AFWERX. And so I really reached out to the company. I had done some research, and I found the company, and I just picked up the phone and kind of really cold called these guys and said, hey, you know, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to do. I want to talk about some of the capabilities that you could potentially work for us. And it took a little over a year and some convincing, but we used last year's Wing Innovation Funds that were left over to actually make this purchase. The other interesting thing is when we were working with the company for the purchase, we had them outfit a plug on the water harvester. So in the event that, let's say the solar kit got down to 20%, and there was a problem with the generator, and it, for whatever reason, didn't come online because generators work perfectly every time, right? You could use the water harvester and actually plug the water harvester into the solar kit so they integrate with each other, and you can harvest the energy that the water harvester has to keep your mission running real time and figure out the problem with the generator, come up with a solution. So you could potentially buy yourself about 6 to 8 hours to solve that problem just with the capabilities that the water harvester has in it. And then I guess if you move to the next slide, slide 16, really just kind of some of the takeaways from Project ArcWater and, you know, some of the things that we're trying to get done, right? It's instant, reliable power. We're trying to reduce this massive footprint of the fuel that we have to take with us, you know, and basically shrink that down to 5-gallon jerry cans instead of 55-gallon barrels. Everything's become man portable, right? No longer need a prime mover to move those generators, to move those HVAC units. cut the power requirements for the HVAC by a third. And really one interesting thing is like a lot of trickle down that comes behind this too. There's no maintenance required. You know, every 300 hours you have to take the generator offline, and it consumes oil, it consumes filters, parts. The inverter and the batteries, there's no maintenance required for them. Essentially plug them up and they work. Setup time, right? Cuts the setup time by almost half from what we were doing, and removes almost 7 tons of weight that needs to be shipped or procured on the other end. And with the water harvester, we can produce water virtually anywhere in any environment. One of the ideas, you know, that initially, or one of the questions that initially came up with the water harvester was, where are you going to get the water? And I was like, I see fire hydrants everywhere around here. I was like, make an adapter that fits to a European fire hydrant, and then, you know, we can use the water from that. But moreover, all of this equipment that we've talked about or mentioned in this kind of Project ArcWater, it all fits in the back of a pickup truck. Essentially, the whole solar kit fits into these three cases, and then the water harvester itself. So no need for like big, huge trucks to get it. You can grab it and just go and get where you need to get your site, your initial, I guess, command post or, you know, operations set up, and then you can just wait for that logistical trail to catch up to you to finish setting up. But the other piece too is not just for ACE. It can easily translate in and outside of the Department of Defense. You know, you think about FEMA, natural disaster responses, you know, emergency management responses. You know, you can actually just grab this thing and go, and then it gives you the autonomy to really just extend your operations, and you don't have to really worry about the logistical piece staying on pace or with you. You can kind of get out ahead of it, and when it shows up, it shows up. So I know that was a little quick, but I'll actually open the floor to questions. I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts and ideas and concepts are for the idea for ArcWater.
This is a great presentation. Do you want to talk a little bit about the SparkTank? Because I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I went to a Greenbelt class. Kind of was starting that process to get my Greenbelt certification. And the Wing Innovation Officer Manager, his name is Tech Sergeant Matthew Conley. He actually, he teaches a class, and we were talking about it. And so I said, hey, I have this idea I'd like to run by you. And he was like, this is a good idea. And so working with the Wing Innovation Office, we submitted the idea officially as a SparkTank submission. There was just under 200 submissions this year. I think it was 187 in the Air Force. There were 2 ideas from Spangdahlem Air Force Base that went forward to compete at USAFE. And then there were 2 ideas from USAFE that went forward to the Air Force. There were 15 ideas total that made it there. And then just after the new year, in the beginning of January, we were notified that we made that final cut to the final 6. So that was kind of how that process has gone. We've had to make a myriad. I see you just submitted the video. This was the final submission that we made. We have to do one more video. Then we have to have it submitted by the end of February. In the event that I think the AFA symposium goes virtual, we'll be able to submit that. But essentially, we've gone through this whole process, and now we go to Vegas. We go to the AFWorks facility in Las Vegas in 2 weeks, and we work with like MGM Works and the AFWorks people to refine. They have like pitch coaches and mentors and that kind of thing. And so we spend the week kind of developing what our picture is going to look like. And then on March the 4th, we will fly to Orlando for the actual AFA War Symposium. And we will get on stage in front of the Secretary of the Air Force, that's the Vice Chief of Staff, or no, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Chief of Staff of the Space Force, both Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force and Space Force, And then they have 2 celebrity guest judges that they didn't tell us who they were, that will be in attendance. And we will have 180 seconds to make our pitch, and then a 3-minute question and answer after the fact. So I would highly encourage you. Some of the really interesting things I've learned along the way doing this is the really interesting thing about the SparkTank idea is if you have an idea, and obviously it's probably been vetted at many different levels as it goes through, but you really get a cut through all the bureaucratic red tape. ArcWater is going to get funded, but it gives you the opportunity to, really kind of put your project or your idea to the front of the line. Essentially, when you get this far, the only person that can say no at this point is the chief of staff. If the USAFE commander, or I'll just use Colonel Houck as an example, our wing commander here. If he was like, I don't want to get behind this ArcWater thing anymore, he's going to have to go all the way up there to tell him why and say, we're not going to get behind this because of X. So if you have your airmen or really any of your big A airmen, and they have these ideas, have them get with your wing innovation office. Every base has one, and have them start to work through those ideas and those concepts, because it's been a super, super eye-opening, super educational experience as I've gotten to go through this. I saw there was a couple more hands that went up. What do you got, Colonel Matthews?
Yeah. My question, and I think you answered a little bit on the takeaways, but anytime you feel the new system, it's the training involved, and as we look at adding new requirements, into our training curriculum, can you give a sense on? They seem pretty out of the box and easy to use, and even the system with the solar panels, it looks like just a very basic frame. The thing hooks on and it's good to go. Can you talk a little bit about the training requirements you envision that would be on a unit, or how quickly you could spin somebody up to use this equipment? Over.
Yeah, no problem, sir. So actually, we've started to kind of incorporate this, and I didn't want to get too deep into like ACE Academy and those type things that we're doing to actually try to train those multi-capable airmen, that multi-capable airman concept. So we've actually had medics like IDMTs, defenders, logistics people, even our own structures troops. Like when they come help me kind of put the tents up and take them down, kind of give everybody a simple walkthrough. Really, the training is the red wire goes to the red wire and the black wires go to the black wires. And you flip the switch. There's essentially only 2 breakers in there. And one of the things I didn't mention in the initial part was it actually has an app. You can download an app. I have an app on my phone right now that I can log on to and see what the system's doing real time. How much, what's the voltage? How much amperage are we pushing out? What's the battery levels at? It records and saves that data is the best way to put it. So as we kind of move forward, from that training aspect, it's really just make sure, like, for one, don't hurt yourself, right? Like, know where, the danger spots are, where the power comes out, those kind of things. And 2, the setup is really, I use these pictures because these are all what we call version 1 prototypes. There are a few other units across the Air Force, like I mentioned at Robins Air Force Base, the CRG, Cannon. There's a few other units that they're using a similar solar technology. They may not be set up in the same aspect. So really it's kind of, I use the term soccer mom tent. The thing literally just expands out, and there's 2 pins that you put in place to kind of lock it in, and the fabric just folds over the top. Really if you really want to dive into it, the inverter can only take 500 volts per photovoltaic input. So there's 2 photovoltaic inputs on that converter. So I learned this the hard way when I was trying to be smarter than the system. I actually got them all close enough, and I was like, hey, I can just put all these solar arrays in series essentially. And then the inverter's like something bad, the inverter wouldn't work. It wouldn't take on any load, and I couldn't figure it out. So I called their technical support line at the manufacturer, and within minutes they were like, hey, you can't exceed 500. I was like, oh, so there are a few technical aspects, along those lines. But essentially, to be honest, sir, it's really just plug and play.
And I would say, especially if anyone's done some of this stuff on their own, right? I mean, the systems we had, kind of Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and kind of post that we've got, they are pretty labor intensive, much bigger. And I'll tell you, this is exciting to see what's out there right now that's available that we can use to get after some of these problem sets. So that's, thank you for talking about that one. I think Scott Turnigan has his hand up, and then Colonel Carlson had a question in the chat box. So let's go to the other Scott.
Hello, thanks for the great presentation. So I'm from U.S. Army Europe and Africa, and yeah, this is very interesting from the mission assurance perspective. The simplicity, the reduced maintenance, and the reduction in dependencies from deliveries of fuel and water. So it seems like, yeah, these could be great systems to add or supplement at our forward sites. Have you, at the Air Force, do you have any plan to actually use these systems long term at forward sites that are currently depending upon traditional generators and delivered water?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this was kind of the second iteration of this concept. I know, like at my previous unit, they've actually taken this out into the field for their, like I said, they were essentially a mobile airport. So you had like some of the navigational aids and a few of the other things, a few of the other equipments that they've actually used out there. They take it to the field. We did actually at Camp Rudder near Eglin. They did a joint exercise with the Army. It was a helo lift, and they used the same technology on a 3-day exercise, and actually it ran that navigational aid for 3 days straight with no generator input. That was one of the actual first field testings that we had done with the unit. As far as long-term sustainment kind of out in the field, I would love to be at the tip of the spear. And if you got somewhere you'd like for me to take this, let me know. I think I saw my boss and my commander was on one of these earlier. We can definitely would love the opportunity to take it out and kind of show that technology. Currently working with the munitions maintenance group here. They were kind of asking around to see if maybe we could try to help support one of their exercises in the field. But I guess from that, to get to the nuts and bolts, Senior Master Sergeant Kenney doesn't probably have the juice to get it out there, as far as to a forward operating location. But I would love the opportunity to take it out there and kind of showcase what it can do. Okay,
so it is capable, it just hasn't been used yet in that way, is what I understand.
Yeah,
but
100%.
There's interest.
I think the big thing that to ask yourself is like, what problem you mentioned, like the logistics piece. You have to, from a power production standpoint, understand the size of the load that you're taking on. Traditionally, when we get to those forward long-term sustainment locations, that power requirement becomes pretty hefty. We've got massive air conditioners. We've got these niceties that we've given ourselves in those locations. So not to say that it couldn't, but there comes a balancing point, right? Could you put this on like a bear base site? Have bear base out of Cannon come and set up a tent city? Sure, we could drastically reduce the fuel that those high voltage generators would have to burn to produce, but now you're going to end up moving a cargo or Connex worth of batteries, so there's there's a scaling piece to this. And I would say, return on investment, do your homework, understand what your sizing requirements are for like ACE or for these smaller, even soft, the special forces community, they move in these small little groups. And they're, right up their alley. You're obviously at a long-term location. You're obviously going to be saving fuel is the bottom answer. But just, I would encourage you, if that's what you're looking to do your homework and make sure you understand what those requirements are. And, the power that the system can deliver. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and that totally makes sense. To see if it matches with the use case, but it seems like there would be opportunities. And Brian Weiberg of our USRAF's engineering office was online, so I'll follow up with him to see if there might be some good use cases for this, and we can be in touch.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Carlson. This question is, what range of temperatures will the solar panels operate, and how many people does one kit support?
All right, thank you for the question. So actually, the solar panels do great in the heat. I think they're actually rated up to 150 degrees. It's when you get into the below zero temperatures where the solar panels actually start to have some issues. I think the company they say around -20 is when the kit will start to have issues. And another thing to mention too about the atmospheric water harvester, right? Once you get below freezing,
Kenney, just to confirm, you're talking degrees Fahrenheit, correct?
Correct. Sorry.
Okay.
My apologies. Yeah, Fahrenheit. About -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The panels actually start to delaminate from the fabric and that sort of issue. And then for the atmospheric water harvester, once it gets below freezing, there's next to no humidity in the air for it to actually harvest if you're trying to do that. So I guess, those are on the high end. I think it was about 150 was what I remember seeing on the chart. And obviously the water harvester will, warm air has more humidity in it, so the warmer the better. If that answers your question, Colonel. Oh, how many people did it support? I forgot. That was the second part. Currently, we support, currently ACE is geared to bed down about 50 people. So that's, you could support, there again, the power requirement, how much be doing your homework, how much are we going to allot per person, as far as kilowatts. I think in CE, it's like 1.2 kilowatts per person, for electronics and essentials. But yeah, we've geared this to support about a 50-person bed down.
Okay. He says, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Senior Master Sergeant Kenney before we wrap up? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I just want to say thank you very much for an outstanding presentation. Like I said, I got a preview of this just because I was a SparkTank command judge here. Next time I see you, I'll send in the mail. I got a coin for you on behalf of Sammy here. It's got our logo with the Kaiserslautern fish, and you'll learn about that if you come down and take the tour of the town, why that's the logo here. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. I would say if anybody has any questions, we can get you in contact with Senior Master Sergeant Kenney. And then the one thing, Seth, if you're on, okay, thank you very much. You just put it in there. If anybody is interested in getting a professional development hour certificate, in the chat box, Major Polson put his information in there. So go ahead and send him an email and he will get you that certificate so you can update your credentials. So I would say thank you very much for this presentation. For those that are out here, a couple other things I thought of as we're sitting through here. So PDH was one, thank you. If you have ideas like this, or you know of something you want to get into the program, we are always looking for go see it so we can get out and see something, or bring these topics up, especially in the virtual environment. Please reach out to Jen Regal, or I think Michaela, I saw you on as well, as we are trying to get our program set for the rest of the year and putting some things together, matching it up against what the semi-national is also asking us to do. I saw Spang and I saw some folks on from Aviano. If you are interested in getting out and doing a STEM activity for your local school, please let us know. Reach out to Master Sergeant Bailey at the I'm not sure if he's at the 86 or 786 CES, and he can set you up and try to make some connections, and maybe we can do something kind of remotely together during the upcoming And I just had lost a little bit of connection. So that's all I have today. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you deem it worthy, March the 4th, you'll have the opportunity to vote. So if you think ArcWater should be the next latest, greatest thing in the Air Force, I'll put my shameless plug in there. Get out your mobile devices, and I'll send the links out if you're interested in voting.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Scott, your hand's up. Congratulations, Scott, on your recent election as the president of the Rhine-Main Post. So look forward to working with you again, and thanks for coming down for the tour in December. Look forward to working with you more over the next year. Anybody else in the group have a question or comment they want to bring up? If not, I'll call that a wrap for today. I'll wait a couple, like 15, 20 seconds. And the last I would say is I just want to say a big thank you to Jen, Senior Kenney, and Charisse for all the behind the scenes work to make this presentation happen today. So thank you all very much. Look forward to seeing you in the next month in February, both in the virtual IGE event we're going to have combined. And then if you're interested in supporting any STEM activities at the schools at Ramstein, the 22nd to 24th of February at K-Town. That's at Ramstein, but other events, please let us know. So looking forward to continue to serve with you, and thank you for your time today. I'm out here.
Thanks, Senior. Great presentation.